for threat intel, an open source journey to building a threat intelligence program. Start with a little introduction. I'm JJ Josing. I'm a threat intel analyst, MISP contributor, SYNAC Red Team member, pro hacker on Hack the Box. In my spare time, I like designing networks, automating tools, and breaking all the things.
I'm Matthew Hoerger. I'm at Turtleface on Twitter. I'm also a threat intelligence analyst, also a MISP contributor, and I'm also a pro hacker on Hack the Box. In my spare time, same thing, I like building networks, I like building systems here at home in my lab, and just trying to hack things and learn more new things as much as I can.
So here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk a little bit about threat intel, what you can do with it, talk about threat intel platforms, some malware sandboxes, the MITRE attack framework, threat profiling, attack group simulation, and then we'll finish it off with some questions. So what is threat intel? It's evidence-based knowledge that adds valuable context around all your indicators of compromise and gives you better insights into the threats that are currently facing your organization. And what can you do with your threat intel? Well, you can detect, and that's by confirming your true positives and then being able to prioritize your incident responses necessary, which also then lowers your alert fatigue. You can predict by correlating your vulnerabilities with the threats that are hitting your externally exposed systems. You can also prevent by using your threat intel to harden your systems to block the known TTPs of the threat actors and isolating your machines when required. And also you can respond to incidents faster by using prioritized alerts that you see correlated with your threat intel. So we'll dive into the malware sandbox, getting intel from your sandbox. Cuckoo is an open source project. You can use it to analyze different types of malicious files and websites. It'll show trace API calls and give you general behavior of what the files are doing. Can also perform memory analysis as well as process memory as well. Has built-in MISP integration. It has a pretty easy to use API as well. So looking here, this is just an example screenshot of the Cuckoo dashboard. Gives you the ability to drag and drop or click to upload files. And then you can also submit URLs or hashes on the right-hand side. And then we're going to dive right into an analysis summary. So we submitted this binary file, ventilator SH300 specification. This was a COVID-19 themed phishing email that came in that generated a spam filter alert. So we went out, pulled the email and grabbed the attachment and then submitted it into the sandbox to do an analysis. And then you can see it spits out all the file hashes, if it matched with the YARA rules. And it also gives you some information about the binary on analysis. And then also give you some signatures that it saw as well. So then we'll take that and start collecting the intel. So the MISP is what we currently use for the threat intel platform. It's a free and open source tip that's written in PHP for gathering, sharing, storing, correlating your IOCs, threat intel, and etc. It stores the IOCs in a structured manner. So most likely all of you have a myriad of different security tools and data. So why not put it to good use and start correlating them together? The main goal of the MISP is to be used, and the developers have made it super simple to store and use your IOCs. And the main goal of the MISP, or one of the awesome things about the MISP is sharing. So makes it super simple to share and or receive intel. A lot of similar organizations face the same threats, so let's work smarter and not harder. Some of us might have analyzed something, a piece of malware from a campaign that somebody else is seeing, so we can share it out without having to redo some of the same work. So basically, you just want to gather and correlate everything you possibly can into the MISP, whether that's your open source feeds, your OSINT threat research, STIX taxi format, if you're part of any ISIC or ISAO sharing groups. So that would be like all your external intel. And then you want to also put any internal intel that you see. So your SIM alerts, firewall alerts, IPS alerts, antivirus EDR, really any tool that has an API makes it super easy to get data into the MISP itself. So this is the sample MISP event from our cuckoo analysis of the ventilator file. Just kind of give it a little bit of a rundown. It'll show where it's sourced from. It's tagged with cuckoo. Shows the number of attributes, when it came in, and if there's any changes, it'll record the last change to the event. And then on the right-hand side, it'll show all of the related events. So if there's anything that correlates to other events, it pops up over there. So you see we got some spam filter events that it correlated to, as well as a URL house known bad, one of our ISIC sharing groups, and an import from an open source feed. Then digging into some of the attributes from the Cuckoo sandbox, go through and you see that it's got the file name with the MD5 SHA-1 hashes, found a URL that it tried to connect out to. And then at the bottom, those are some of the signatures that it picked up on. So you can see that one of them is TTP 1055, or process injection. That was one that kind of stood out a little bit. So keep that in mind. We'll dive a little bit more into that one in the upcoming slides. But then as we continue down, we can see that it's got unpacked shellcode, tagged it as goo loader. And then there's some YAR rules that it detected on. And then if you look in the tab on the right-hand side, under related events, these are all the other events where you have the MISP has seen this attribute in another event. So it makes it real simple. You're able to click on any of those hyperlinks and drops you right into the next event. And then it gives you your sample correlation map as well. So all those other events that we saw, it kind of visualizes that and shows you where those different events were saw with the different attributes. And then it kind of gives you a bigger view of everything kind of all together, and how all these different attributes kind of tie together into this correlation. And then the main goal is automating. Automation is key for us. We were tasked with starting the threat intel program at our organization just over a year ago, and we're a two-person team. So we don't have time to kind of manually go through and add in different indicators for different events. So we look to automate where we can. And this is showing an example of how simple it is to make an API call to create an event in the MISP. At the bare minimum, this is what's needed. So if you even have just basic scripting abilities, you'll be able to start taking advantage of this. I mentioned earlier that MISP wants it to be as simple as possible. So their PyMISP library that they have does just that. It's got awesome constructors to build events, attributes, but at the minimum, it's 8 lines to create an event, 8 lines of code. really.
Okay. With that being said, another open source or free tool or free information that we use is the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So as you can see here, I'm pretty sure many of you are familiar with the MITRE ATT&CK, but what they do is create a globally accessible knowledge base of adversary tactics and techniques based on real-world observations. As you can see here, they map it out in a kill chain fashion here, and they give you all the different techniques that might fall along these different steps of the kill chain, like initial access, execution, persistence. So we can look at this and just have a good place to map all of this out and see all the different methods associated with each kill chain. Another good thing that they have is they show the groups. You can go to the next slide, JJ. So here they'll list out a lot of the advanced persistent threat groups that are out there that they see. Groups are sets of related intrusion activity that are tracked by a common name in the security community. Analysts track clusters of activities using various analytic methodologies and terms such as threat groups, activity groups, threat actors, intrusion sets, and campaigns. They make it really easy. They give the name of the group, associated groups with that same name, and a description on it, so you can try to gain as much intel on these groups that you care about. Another thing they provide is the TTPs that are associated with each group. You can go to the next slide, JJ. So here's a way that they list them all out. They'll give the TTP name, a description of what it is and what it does. They give really, really good descriptions on how it's performed, what it's actually doing, what it's touching. Yeah, so once we, so we can get all that information just from MITRE, and then what you want to start doing with all this information is start threat profiling. So when we threat profile, we're primarily focused on who is targeting you or your organization, how they are targeting you, and then align with the MITRE framework, and then simulate. So what this means is that we can use all those resources just provided to us from MITRE to learn about the groups, learn about their motives, what they're after, and really get to see that if your organization is in their scope of attack, it can definitely help your organization shift focuses on things that actually matter. And then with all that free information from MITRE, you can really start to learn about these groups and spend time focusing on a specific set of groups rather than trying to protect against the world, because it's not going to happen and it's pretty impossible. So when you have an organization that you're specifically, your organization deals with maybe finances or retail, you can definitely start narrowing down which groups are potential risks to your company. And then you can start creating your threat profile based on that. So you go to the next slide, JJ. This is an example of one of the threat groups, APT 37. MITRE provides a nice description of the group, like I mentioned. They give you as much information as about them as they can, when they were first seen, last seen, how they were seen. And then one of the big things is that they provide the techniques used. On the bottom there, you can see. So they'll provide the TTP of it, a description, and then we can start to read up on all these different groups that we've decided that are an actual threat to our organization. And from there, we can start, collecting information, collecting all the TTPs that are associated with these groups. If you go to the next slide. So here's it's an Excel spreadsheet that I put together. It's got some fancy functions and macros in it, but we use this to gather all the TTPs that are associated to each of the threat groups that are in our scope of threat groups that we're worried about. So as you can see, I've collected the TTP there, a name of it, and there is a scoring system on there that I'll get to in a minute here, description of the TTP, and then the different threat groups that are associated with this TTP. So as an organization, you can go through, you can collect all these, and then you have a good solid basis of all the techniques that are possibly going to be tried against your company. So after figuring out what threat groups might potentially be coming after you, organizations start to gather the TTPs that are commonly associated with these particular threat groups. Knowing the tactics and techniques that are going to be actively tried against your organization is a great way to stay prepared and to prevent attacks. And when I say prevent attacks, the next thing would be to try to start simulating some of these attacks and seeing how your tools react to them. It's, knowing how these groups are going to come after your organization is a great thing. And the next step is to see if you're prepared for it, to start actually simulating these attack groups and seeing how your tools or how your analyst can respond to things that they see like this. So the next tool that we take good advantage of is Atomic Red Team. Go to the next slide. Atomic Red Team is open source. It's made by Red Canary. It's a simple attack simulation, and it also lines up with the MITRE attack matrix. That's just a little picture I stole from them, but yeah, develop detection, execute tests, and collects evidence. And that's something that we really do take advantage of at our organization. We'll meet up like once a week or once every other week and just use these TTPs that we gathered and start performing these simulated attacks on our own end. And again, this is open source, which makes it really nice. And it was really easy to push on to our upper management and organization to try to utilize this. I know there's a lot of paid services that are out there that they're pretty expensive. So this just makes it a great way to kind of test waters and just see how it goes. If you go to the next slide, the Atomic Red Team, they provide atomic tests, they're called. And the reason why they're called atomic tests is because they're designed to be just simple, quick tests that kind of sum up the basis of that TTP. In this case, I know JJ mentioned we ran that sample in Cuckoo, and one of the things that it pulled from out of there was process injection, and it lined it up to the MITRE framework as TTP 1055. So we can actually go to the Atomic Red Team and look up that 1055, and they'll provide multiple tests, sometimes one, sometimes 10 different kind of tests to kind of simulate that. In this example, there's a really, really easy one they provide, just this atomic test for process injection via C#. In this case, it's actually an executable that they provide that'll fully simulate this attack. So what we do is we'll spin up virtual machines on our network, AD join them, and then we'll actually run these tests on there. Sometimes they're not as easy as running an executable, but they'll just be a list of commands that they walk you through, and they couldn't make it any easier. It's really cool, and you get to learn how a lot of these TTPs and how these methods are used. And at the same time, as you do these, you can actively monitor your tools and make sure that you're detecting on it and collecting the right data and things like that. So the next slide kind of shows how we run these tests on our virtual machine. In this case, it's just running it in administrative PowerShell, which it does that process injection via C#. It picks the notepad process there, and then injects a malicious DLL in there, which pops the calculator. And that's just kind of a sample right there. It is a lot cooler live, but we weren't trusting the demo gods too much to try to do some live stuff. But it does look, it works really simple, very fast and easy. And what we'll do is we'll run these tests and then simultaneously have somebody in our SIM or in any other tool that we use to detect in our EDR or whatever the case may be, and try to see if we saw anything. Sometimes it's as easy as it was straight up blocked, it didn't even allow this thing to run. Sometimes we got to do a little digging to see if we can actually find the data and the commands that were ran. So with that being said, we had those lists of TCPs that I had in my spreadsheet there. If you want to go to the next slide, JJ. So we can start ranking a lot of the stuff that we do. So as we go through this list of TTPs, we can provide these rankings on the side here, which in the next slide, I have kind of how I define the scoring. This is a grading scale I base off the amount and type of data that you're collecting and what you're doing with that data. So a none, a poor, a 0 score would be not enough data to even detect on that adversary technique. And then excellent being you're collecting all the data, you're doing something with the data, automatically blocking things, and then you're having a good understanding of the environment. So whether this kind of stuff's supposed to be ran in that environment, or if it's normal or unnormal. And then some of the other scores, just again based on if you're collecting the right data. I mean, the scoring is basically made up just on what you're actually collecting and what you're doing with it. I know as an organization, it's going to be really hard to get that excellent score. So we try to aim towards getting a good score, to where we're detecting on it. So there's alert being generated. So at least we're getting some eyes on it. But that detection still requires some validation on whether it's true positive or a false positive. And then that very good score would be that we detect on it, we do something about it, and we know enough about it that it's a true positive to actually make some, take some automated actions on it. Things like, automatically blacklisting things or blocking things, just because we know enough about this. We have enough data there to actually make that decision confidently. And like JJ mentioned, like we're all about automation. We're a small team, and anything that we can do automated is a lot better. And that's where like a lot of this threat intel helps out a lot, is to make those confident decisions. So I did mention that I wrote that Excel spreadsheet with some fancy functions on it. The next spreadsheet shows that as we fill out those TTPs, whether we give them, the good, poor, excellent score from that list, this Excel spreadsheet will automatically start coloring up a heat map here. And all this is the MITRE ATT&CK matrix. And then provided with those functions, it'll automatically fill out the colors here. This is just kind of like a high overview of, how strong your organization is and where should we put our focuses on. Obviously, we wouldn't, things that we're excellent in or proficient in, we wouldn't want to spend too much time on. We want to kind of set a goal for ourselves. And like I mentioned, ours is that good goal. So we want to focus on some of these red things, on these poor scores, and figure out, why weren't we collecting enough data? How do we collect the right data, and just kind of work from there. And this is really a collaborative team effort here when we do these tests. As we're testing, our analysts are going through them, and it really helps us get a better understanding of our tools and how to use them also. This also is a great way to, I know we've used it a couple of times, to POC some tools, just to go through and, we have the 2-week access or 3-week access. We can go through and run through these tests, and then we can side by side compare them to how our other tools are responding and reacting to, some of these alerts or some of these TTPs. I give it a couple times where this has helped a lot, but yeah, it gives us that initial look at a tool, and then it even like provides the possibility to like go to vendors and say, hey, like, you guys detect really good here. What about these areas? Can we help? Can we do anything to provide better detection or prevention in these areas where we saw that you guys lack on? And it just makes it a great conversation piece to bring back to vendors, and then have them work with their engineers on figuring out, how to use their tools better, or how to focus them more on things that your organization cares about. And then with that, we can track results over time. This is another thing that we do. We'll run these tests like quarterly, and then we can start to see trends building on the different areas through that MITRE ATT&CK framework. We can see like initial access, execution, and how we're doing over time, and just kind of give a good visual of what it looks like. This is great for like upper management, for your directors or for your CISO to kind of see, how we're progressing as a company, or say, we see certain spikes, and it's because we, added a tool, or maybe we POC'd a tool and we saw our numbers drastically jump up. It definitely gives you some more ammo into wanting to get a budget for new tools, or to prove your point on why we need new tools and what they can do for our organization. This makes that really easy to show in a visual level here. I know we've used it several times to kind of go through and get better tooling. It was one of the ways that we were faced with a time that we had to choose our SIM tool and our EDR tool and things like that. And we had a bunch of them to POC, and we were going through and just running these tests, and then we could actually have real-time numbers on how they compare to each other and what we really care about. So this just makes it really, really cool. And like I said, this is just a spreadsheet that I wrote, got the idea off some other ones on the internet. So if anybody wants a copy of this spreadsheet, I'll gladly share it. It's all ready to go. All you have to do is just rank the TTPs that you collected that you care about. They're all listed there from the MITRE website. So it has everything. You just rank the ones that you care about, and you can it'll automatically generate the heat map and this results over time graph here. Right. And then the next one is we're just kind of showing, I probably mentioned a couple times now, but kind of that example workflow here. Like JJ had mentioned, we got spam filter generates an alert. That was that binary that he mentioned earlier. So one of the things that we do have an integration with our spam filter into the MISP that'll automatically create that event in the MISP. So we'll get as much data as our spam filter has captured. Things like sender email address, sender, the headers, the IP it came from, things like that will be already sent to the MISP and ready for correlation or ready for further analysis. The next thing that we can do is take that binary and submit it to Cuckoo, like JJ showed. So that, once that's in Cuckoo, then that'll also create a event in MISP, and then we can start to see that correlations, whether that's correlating to, obviously it'll correlate probably to our original spam filter event in the MISP, but it also might correlate to other things that were captured from our spam filter, and that kind of gives us a really good picture on, we see that this was targeted at our organization, but at what scale? We might see that this was targeted at 1,000 something users or whatever the case may be. I know one good example that we had is recently with the COVID pandemic. One of the questions that upper management was asking, well, how many COVID themed phishing emails are we receiving? The MISP made it really, really easy to just search keyword COVID and filter out on our spam filter events only, and then get a real time number on how many COVID themed emails we were getting. And I know that made it extremely helpful to get that number really quick and get a confident number that we could share with upper management. So after getting some of those events and the things in the MISP, JJ showed that one of the things that we did capture was a TTP that aligned with the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which we were able to simulate with Atomic Red Team to test our tools. Obviously, from our threat intelligence, we gathered this is a COVID themed phishing email that was targeted at our organization. In this case, we might have seen that it was targeted at all of our C levels or all of our users, or someone's just using spraying our entire company domain users. And we can actually start to say, well, let's see how well we are prepared if someone does run this executable, or someone does take this further and this is actually running in our environment and this is an active attack. We can stay proactive by simulating it and making sure our tools rank well against it. And if they don't, then we can definitely shift our focuses on making it better, getting it better detections, better preventions, things like that. One of the last things that we kind of didn't mention about was a SOAR tool. We don't use an open source SOAR tool. That's why we kind of kept it out of the talk. But things that you can do with a smaller team, if you do have a SOAR tool, is you can start automating some of this stuff based on, say, our spam filter sees something and the MISP has already correlated that this is known bad at this many organizations, or this is already ran in Cuckoo, came back known bad. It had this TTP, and we already deemed that this was something that we care about. Well, you can use your SOAR tool to kind of take proactive measures against that, to kind of automate it to help enrich alerts to the point where either analysts can quickly and confidently close alerts or identify if it's a true positive or false positive, or not even have an analyst have to look at it. Get it to the point where we see correlations, we see this IP is correlated to this known bad list, or this ISAC group shared with us that it's obviously known bad, it should be blacklisted. Then we can just take those actions automatically. I know at our organization we do those kind of automatic actions, things like blacklisting IPs in our firewalls based on what we see in the correlations from MISP, and also blacklisting things in our AV and our EDR tool. So that's just kind of a way to tie it all together.
So to kind of wrap things back up, you want to make your threat profiles. You want to see, which threat actors, what groups are you most concerned about, most likely to target you. because you're not going to be able to defend against everything. The MITRE framework is so huge. So really just dive down into, based on which vertical you're in, who's most likely to be targeting you. You want to gather and correlate, excuse me, you want to gather and correlate as much of your intel into your MISP as possible. So like I mentioned, all your external feeds, any Stix taxi formats, any Isaac groups, any just OSINT work that you do, along with all your security tools. The PyMISP API makes it so simple to get any data in. You really just gotta, go out, make an API call, parse your data, and then feed it into the PyMISP. Make sure to analyze your binaries. There's lots of good intel that you can grab out of it. We built this talk about a year ago after we started getting our threat intel infrastructure up, and Cuckoo was still maintained at the time. It seems like it's kind of a dead project. It's all in Python 2, and they don't really seem to have any plans to move it over. So while this was what worked for us, we might recommend a different project that's based off of Cuckoo, but it's called Cape V2. It's an updated version of Cuckoo, and it just does binary analysis, but you can grab, like some potential TTPs from it. You might be able to grab signatures with YARA rules out of it, determine, the type of malware family it's from. You don't want to be selective on what you bring into your MISP. So all of that stuff is good data to have. You want like a central repository where you can go in and look and query and say, what do I know about this? And know that you've got all your data there, and that, if you've seen it and you make it, quick search in the MISP, it'll pull up anything that it's seen. Kind of cut down some of that investigative time that you'd spend having to go out to VirusTotal or hybrid analysis and go and find those things. We're trying to provide all of that ahead of time, so that we already have that investigative work done, cut down on time that would need to respond to incidents or events. Then you want to take all of that and map it to the MITRE framework, determine which specific TTPs are being used, and then do your attack simulation with that. It's a good and important way to go about showing your detection and prevention capabilities. Matt mentioned it. Doing this kind of with the process that we spoke of, it makes it really simple and a lot easier to try to present that to the upper management, to persuade them into understanding your reasoning behind asking for this tool or more budget, so that you can do more things, because let's face it, everybody struggles to get that stuff. So anything to make it easier is going to be a win.
And then, like JJ said, the Cuckoo was kind of seems like a dead project now. We were able to get it working again up until this talk. So, I mean, it did take a little bit, but there is a lot of bugs and errors that haven't been fixed yet. But if you just mess with it enough, you can get it working again. But there is other options out there. I know as an organization, we use Cuckoo to kind of show value in getting that malware sandbox to analyze things. So that kind of showed upper management the value in it, and we were able to pivot to something that the organization could pay for, which provides a little bit more, probably more content, a little bit easier to use. And that was kind of the goal when we started this threat intel team. We didn't really know where to go with it, and it's kind of hard to convince upper management to spend sometimes millions of dollars on tools, and we truly don't know the value that we can get from it, considering this is a brand new threat intel team. And what if we pay for this tool and we don't like it, or we find it's not working for us? That's what made using open source tooling so much better. We could actually get a feel for it and see how it does provide value. That's where we got the MISP, the Cuckoo, and Atomic Red Team, and that did help a lot. But currently we are still using MISP and Atomic Red Team. MISP is great. I know there's a lot of paid or a lot of vendors that sell a tip, and they are pretty expensive. That's kind of where me and JJ, that's how we discovered the myths. We were searching for those common tips that people use. And we saw a couple of them, POC'd them, and then we got to that price point, and it was like, whoa, like this is a lot of money. And I mean, I just don't feel comfortable, forcing my company to pay this much money. Let me do a little bit more research, and we discovered, the MIST tool, and it's been nothing but great so far.
Yeah, we're a little early on time, but like we mentioned earlier, you can find us on Twitter if you guys have any questions, want to reach out to us about anything. And then we also have a list of our resources that we used as well.
And then I know we're both extremely open to anybody that has questions or needs help with the MIST. Like we mentioned, we are MIST contributors. We wrote a couple integrations that really helped our organization out, and then shared those with the guys that created the MIST, and they found them interesting too, so they added them to their repos. So we're pretty well informed. We're pretty good at working in the MIST, and we just love hearing people's ideas and what they're trying to do with the MIST. But like JJ said, like, don't be selective. Get as much as you can in there, and you'll just start seeing these correlations, and you'll just immediately start seeing value in it the more you get in there, which is really cool. And there is a lot of free MIST feeds that you can add, you can integrate into your own MIST. I know if anyone's interested in any of that, you can reach out to us for that too. We actually wrote a bunch of integrations that take advantage of these free and open source feeds, whether they're in MIST format or whether they're in CSV or sticks format. We found ways to parse them out and to get them into MIST, and it just makes the MIST a lot stronger of a tool, and really, really easy to start up. If you're an organization that doesn't have a threat intelligence team or a program yet, focusing on the MIST is just an amazing way to get that going.
All right, so we're gonna end it here. We'll be available in the Track 2 channel. You can reach us there or on Twitter. But yeah, let's collaborate with some MISP stuff and some threat intel.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, awesome.